Welcome to your last lesson of pre-calculus. Now, notice here, graphing calculator required. If you don't have it, pause this video, go and find it. Make sure that the graphing calculator, if you're using an online one, lets you use with matrices. All right, or just Google online matrix calculator, because you do not want to do any of these by hand. While they are possible, don't do it. So, what we're going to do is talk about how to use systems of equations and solve them with matrices, and these are really helpful for when you have problems with, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4 different variables, x, y, z, and w. You can use elimination, you can use substitution. It's so much easier with a calculator, so we're going to talk about how to do that. So let's first make sure that we have our calculator skills. So the idea here is that we're going to look at something called identity matrices. And the identity matrices is just, it's got all the ones like this, and then it's got everything else is 0. And the idea with this is that if I take an inverse matrix times itself, they cancel out to 1. And so this is just like solving with other problems. And so if I want to solve a system, so let's say it's number 2, I'm going to solve for these variables. I could have used the system of equation method that we did yesterday, but what we also can do is we can say, oh, well, this is something times our variables is equal to some other number. What I'd usually do here is divide by a, but you could do the same thing as multiplying by a inverse on both sides. Notice how I'm doing it first in the order. This is important. And a to the negative 1 times a would cancel. And so then our variables are equal to a to the negative 1, or a inverse, times b. This is true for numbers. It's also true for matrices. So we want to be able to find inverse, and we want to be able to multiply. So in order to find the inverse, let's start with this. The first thing you need to do is enter it into your matrix option on your calculator. So for most of you, that means go to the matrix button, which is the second function, and then go to edit, just like we talked about yesterday, and click on A, and A is a 2 by 2 matrix, and you want to enter in 2, 4, negative 1, 3, just like we see here. All right? Now, once you go back to your matrix, you want to go to the mode, the open blank space, and then click second matrix again, so that you see in the name list. So then what you're doing is you're looking at matrix name and click on A so that it appears on that main screen. Now, since you're looking for the inverse, you're going to use the negative 1, which is a key that you have. It should just be the same key that you've been hitting for matrices. And so just use x to the negative 1 so that it looks like this. Click enter, and it will give you your inverse matrix. So 0.3, negative 0.4, 0.1, 0.2. If you don't end up with this matrix, please come and ask for help on Zoom. Now, in order to solve this, like I said, we can just do this. So what we're wanting to do is multiply 0.3, negative 0.4, 0.1, 0.2 times, in this case, so this is the A matrix. We're going to call this B for the other side of this equation. So enter in, again, go matrix edit. For B, enter in 6, 7. So it's just a small matrix there. Then, using your calculator, you can do matrix A to the negative 1 times matrix B, and that's going to give you the solution matrix, which would be -1, 2. That's the same as x and y. These are your variables. And if you remember from your last lesson, x was equal to -1 and y was equal to +2. So we've just solved our system just using our calculator. Now, I don't necessarily think that this is faster when it's a small system with 2 variables. I think you should just use elimination or something else. But as we look at number 3, this is a much more complicated system. And so I definitely want to recommend you use a matrix for this. So when you set up your matrix using the system, what you want to do is each row is going to be your equation. So you're going to have equation 1, equation 2, equation 3, equation 4 in this case. And for each equation, then you're going to have your row, which will be the coefficients of x, y, z, and w. So each of your separate variables. And notice how I just said coefficients. So for our first one, we have 1x and 2y, no z's, and 3w. So that's going to be our first row of our matrix. Our next row is for our second equation. There's no x, there's 1 y, 1 z, 1 w. Next row is no x, 1 y, no z, 1 w. Last row, 1x, 2y, no z, and 2w. So this is what I'm going to call, you can call this matrix A. So call this matrix A. Put it into your calculator. This is then going to be multiplied x, y, z, w. And then the other one is going to be our answers. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So these are, again, the coefficients. This is the variable. And then the answers in order. So still equation 1, equation 2, equation 3, equation 4, these answers right here. Now the answers are what I'm going to put in for B, again in my calculator. Then I'm going to go on my calculator and say A inverse times B, which you can just copy from the problem above. Let your calculator do a little thinking. This is a much harder problem. It might take it a little bit. You'll end up with -1, 5, -1, -3. These are your answers. X is equal to -1. Y is equal to 5. Z is equal to -1. W is equal to -3. Whoop. Some of that handwriting got a little wonky. Sometimes when my hand touches the plate, that happens. Now, the way that this might be written in the back of the book will be still in alphabetical order, so the W is going to come first. Whoop. So we get -3, then -1 for x, 5, -1. So either of these ways could be written for your answer. Again, and use your calculator. If you're not sure how to use your calculator, please set up a Zoom with me. And I'd be happy to work your way through before your quiz on Friday. Have an